together a panel to talk about this, to talk about all the different players that are in the ecosystem, how other areas have done it. Nice to have Mike.
I'm Brad Feld, partner at Foundry Group, venture capital firm in Boulder, Colorado. If you go back to the industrial era, everything ran in the hierarchy. Businesses had a boss, and people worked for the boss, and worked your way up the hierarchy. As we evolved from industrial society to information society, we started to see some changes. In entrepreneurship, especially at the very early stages, there is no hierarchy. If the hierarchy tries to drive the startup community, it essentially stifles it. The hierarchy is really collapsing, and many more aspects of what we do are behaving as a network. This was the starting point for thinking about how startup communities evolve. What I came to was a thesis that I call the Boulder thesis that has 4 parts, and those 4 parts are essential for a sustainable, vibrant startup community anywhere in the world. First, it has to be led by entrepreneurs. I define the universe into 2 categories of people, leaders and feeders. The leaders in this context are entrepreneurs, and the feeders are everyone else that participates in the startup community. University, government, venture capital investors, angel investors, service providers, lawyers, accountants, etc. The feeders have very important roles. They become part of the fabric of the startup community, but the feeders can't be leaders. The leaders have to be entrepreneurs. Second is entrepreneurs have to take a very long-term view. It's a generational view, 20+ years. It's people who are making a long-term commitment to invest heavily in the development of their startup community. The right cliche is that you're running a marathon, not a sprint. In a startup community, over a long period of time, you're going to have some extraordinary successes, as well as some really huge failures. When somebody's incredibly successful, that person is still part of that startup community. When somebody's a failure, have a wake, move on, reincorporate them into other things. You're essentially saying it's okay. It's just part of the process. Third is you have to have a philosophy of inclusiveness. It's not just other entrepreneurs, but anybody who's interested in being part of this startup ecosystem. If everybody contributes energy into the startup community, it'll get bigger and grow faster and be more successful and be more fun. And the fourth is you have to have activities and events that engage the entire entrepreneurial stack. Those activities and events need to be more substantive than an award dinner or a cocktail party. They have to be things like an accelerator program like Techstars that engages the entire community in helping a set of startups get going. Or something like Startup Weekend that's essentially a simulation of entrepreneurship. So those 4 pieces are essential for the long-term health of a startup community. It's just this sort of network chaos of entrepreneurs doing what entrepreneurs do, which is create things. That force of the entrepreneurs to build something bigger than just themselves and their company is so incredibly powerful.
Talk about today. I'm Diane Egner. I'm the publisher and managing editor of 83 Degrees Media, an online publication that reports on talent and innovation in the Tampa Bay region. As a media sponsor for today's event, 83 Degrees is proud to be part of one of the fastest growing and most innovative media companies in America. In addition to our publication, we also host a speaker series called After Average Speakers. You're all invited to our next event, which is November 14th, about fostering a community of innovation. We can continue the discussion that occurs here and there as well. You can read all about it in an upcoming edition at 83degreesmedia.com. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the panelists for this morning. Joining us in the discussion on the far right, or your left, I guess would be Kurt Forster. He's the manager of Small Business Development Center at Pinellas County Economic Development. He's also a certified instructor of the Kaufman Foundation's Tech Venture Entrepreneurial Program and Next Level Business Training Classes, and he is the founder of Common Ground, a downtown development organization in St. Petersburg. Then we have Pat Gehant. She is the director of Hillsborough Pinellas Workforce Project at Tampa Hillsborough Economic Development Corporation. In that role, she has just completed a 5-month IT workforce gap study for the Tampa Hillsborough EDC. The report includes recommendations for strengthening the Tampa Bay area's talent development pipeline. And Mark Sharpe, come on down. The Hillsborough County Commissioner is an active member of the Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the Tampa Bay Partnership. He represents the Board of County Commissioners on Tampa Bay Water and the Museum of Science and Industry. Over the past 2 to 3 years, Mark has really established a reputation for taking a personal interest in the tech community and in helping grassroots events like BarCamp, Tampa Bay Technology Forum, and Tampa Bay Wave get recognized for their contributions to the local economy. And our moderator today is Alexis Muellner. He's been editor at the Tampa Bay Business Journal since 2004 and appears every Friday morning on ABC Action News in Tampa. He's also a regular commentator for Bay News 9 and for WUSF. Take it away, Alexis.
Thank you, Diane. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Sorry. A killer event, I mean, that's really key. Today, I think really what our aim is to get the dialogue going. It's going to be an ongoing dialogue because clearly this is not an ecosystem that is nascent and embryonic, but one that has some evolution. And I think we should start off, and we don't have a ton of time, so I want to get a lot of interaction from all of you, and if you have, we'll get the panelists going, but if you have questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand, and we'll keep the conversation really moving. What I want to start with, maybe we can all address this, and I want to hear then a little bit more about what you each are doing lately, but what are some of the greenhouse gases, the invasive species that are hindering this ecosystem now? I mean, to start with that, what are some of the barriers that we're facing, just as a set of context? And Mark, why don't we start with you on that? Can you give a sort of broad overview of some of the things that we need to fight to work against initially?
I just think that first off, it's an honor to be here, and I'm really excited that this many people are coming on a Saturday morning to talk about something like this. You know, the challenges that we face are that the government is not structured to assist and help startups like what we see here in this room, the folks who want to kind of create a startup community. Mr. Feld's book that I think is a fabulous book, talks about Boulder. Government really is more comfortable with your large relocations, going after your corporate entities and trying to get them to leave one city and come to your city. We're real good at, you know, talking to like a Bass Pro Shop or your big, box stores. That to us has been economic development. Tampa Bay has been challenged because our growth really came through the home building industry. So if you weren't building homes, you were marketing, selling them, financing them, or talking to 65-year-old and 70-year-old retirees about coming to live here, that was our industry. And so our challenge is that we've got to let folks know that really what's emerging is what you see here in this room and outside this room. It's young entrepreneurs who really aren't much interested in what government's doing, but could use some help. Maybe they could use some capital help. Maybe they need physical location. Maybe they just need great mentoring because they're ready to take an idea and try to move it into the business community, and they just need some assistance. And so I'm glad that the EDC and other entities are listening, because for me, this is about us trying to provide assistance. Really, I mean, I'm described as a bottom feeder oftentimes. I need to be a government person. We need to be feeding the system from the bottom up. And this, to me, truly is going to be a bottom-up revolution that's taking place, not top-down. And that's why I'm excited to be part of it, and we're here to help.
Yeah, a lot of this is communication, which I want to get to in a minute. But what about you, Kurt, in terms of the lay of the land, the greenhouse gases, the invasive species?
Well, I think Mark's right. I think there are pockets of government that are now willing to see the animal the way you described. That it needs to be a more organic, more community-oriented, bottom-up kind of percolating community of entrepreneurship. And I think you're going to see, and we are seeing, government pieces of little pockets of government supporting that, being, as Feld says, what not the leader, the feeder. But there's one issue, I think, in Tampa Bay, and I suspect it's in every community, that I don't have an answer to, and I want to bring it up, because you're asking, what's the problem? What's the roadblock?
I figured that was the place to start.
And that one issue, as a community of entrepreneurship, is what do we do with our failures? In other words, when an entrepreneur fails, or a community of people fail at supporting an entrepreneur, what do we do about that? When we kill the failure, when we hold them up and say, what an idiot, you know, my gosh, I can't believe anybody got involved with this project, we destroy the sense of we can do this, that we can have successes. We ought to be, you know, holding up these failures and saying, hey, great, this guy failed, he must have learned a lot. I want to go find out what he learned.
An anatomy of failure. I mean, that's probably the key thing, is to derive learning lessons from that.
So we need to learn from these failures. We need to be okay with people in our community who have failed at it, or who have, you know, chipped away at it and maybe not gotten there, or whatever. We need to start being okay with that. We can't only kind of say, all right, well, I'll get on board with this guy because I think he's going to be successful, and then
let
me run away from him if he's not.
Right. I want to let's circle back to that in a minute, because I think there may be some best practices that you've learned or other people in the room have learned about how to deal with that. I think it's a really important issue. What about, let's again go through the panel ones. Pat, what about you in terms of what you're seeing overall?
Well, the workforce study we just finished, I think one of the things that we found out is connections, and communication was a big issue, and messaging, who's doing what. So marketing the area is friendly to tech. So if we're, and looking at the entrepreneurs in the area and celebrating and their successes and marketing those successes to the community and to the world. That's one of the things we have to get better at doing. The other thing we have to get better at doing is teaching the entrepreneurship at the college and high school level, and creating a community where students, that we're building the future, we're creating a future. So, and making that part of a standard part of the community. And I think a lot of the recommendations that we came up with, and one of the things I'd like to ask today is, we want to try to get more of this community involved in some of the solutions, because as you said earlier, it is from the bottom up. We need to not have a strategy that sits on a shelf. We need to actually work it. So we need mentors, we need professionals that will mentor young students to explain how the world works. Nobody's explaining to them what their options are. So they don't think of new things, and they're not developing it. So those are some of the tasks and activities that we want to do, so that we can build a community and then have government come in, as you say, and start incentivizing that entrepreneurship, and not just focusing on bringing in the big box stores in this area. I mean, we have some of the best educational institutions in the country here. We have, between USF, St. Pete College, HCC, UT, they're all producing quality students, but we need to direct them in the area that get into the entrepreneurial area and the development area. So there's a lot of work that has to be done in that area.
What are the best practices that either, all three of you have seen in either the cities that we are touting, like Boulder, or like Cleveland, like Stamford, Connecticut, like Long Island City, or Hoboken? You know, as it relates to these things, are there educational, you know, we have a press release sitting here of USF launching a fully online Master of Science in Management Information Systems. That's another thing we're talking about. What are some of the best practices, and related to the failure issue as well, that you're seeing that we can share, that you're aware of, that maybe we want to adopt? There are some examples, ideas, Mark?
Again, you're talking to a guy that's not out there doing the startups. I mean, I'm kind of coming from the government perspective, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. But what I've seen, and what it seems to be a common denominator, is that if you're interested in going and starting, I mean, Jordan Rayner's got a great company, Citizen Investment. He starts it up. He's got great ideas. He wants to get some assistance, and he starts talking to local government. Local government immediately says, hold on a second, that's not how we do things. So here we're kind of rigid in how we approach even dealing with startup companies like that. So the next thing he needs capital. So what does he have to do? He has to get on a plane and fly to San Francisco and talk to the venture capital guys, because really there's no venture capital here that really understands this community. And so the opportunity that you have on the West Coast, where you can go out there and walk into a coffee shop and find someone who will, you know, fund you, that can do your coding. I mean, I was at a hackathon last week right here at USF, at the COP building, talking to students, and they were saying, we need more coders. We got, I've never met more 21-year-old, you know, CEOs, you know, than at this room. I mean, it was amazing. Oh yeah, I've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. I was told by this one guy, young man, you know, I got a company, I got techers all over the world. So really it's about bringing people together. The other thing that just frustrates me, we got lots of plans, and I'll tell you what, Hillsborough County, we are the best at doing studies, at hiring consultants, and talking. Where we're weak, doing. We're afraid of it. And so we really are. We're afraid of doing because we are afraid of the failure. We know that there's an opportunity to not succeed, and we do sometimes banish those who try to the sidelines, to oblivion. But what I've sensed is a transformation in the way we're thinking. My hope is that government, all these entities that spend a ton of money out there talking and promoting, start doing. And I think that even if we just do something, sometimes I think you'll see things get better.
You have a thought, Pat? Then we'll get to Kurt.
And I agree with you, and I think that's why the EDC and the Workforce Alliance did the workforce study that we just completed. And I was hired and told, don't make this a shelf plan. So do. So what we are actually doing. So the study is out, and it is. That's why I said earlier, we need help getting this stuff done. It's not about setting up new bureaucracies. It's not about creating new infrastructures to process things. Things are there. The component parts of a quality IT ecosystem are here. We just need to connect them. And my job is to start connecting the people and exactly doing what you said. And so there's a saying from Confucius that's, I'll paraphrase. It's not about whether you fail, it's how you get up when you do fail. And I think that's what we're talking about, of making sure that we can celebrate the fact that if we did have a failure, what a success that we tried. And I think that's what we need to start marketing, and that's when we're talking about the EDCs and the EDOs getting together to market this area. That yes, we will fail, but boy, we'll get up and we'll try it again. And it's safe. It's a safe environment to try things. And I think that's
I think we're getting a really interesting theme here, and I'd like you to talk about sort of potential best practices for how to take those failures and not just banish them to one side, and to really figure out a way that we can learn from them and bring that to the community and use those as a building block. It's a 20-year horizon for this. I mean, it's a really long-term approach.
Well, so on best practices thing, I mean, I have a number of them in my mind. One of them is BarCamp. Right? BarCamp is clearly a best practice, and I can remember Joel contacting me 5-6 years ago and saying, we're going to do this BarCamp thing, and trying to explain to me what it was. I'm like, what?
Lawyers? Is
this guy insane? And I came to the first one and I was like, oh wow, now I get it, and the way the community kind of is able to come together and drive the agenda. And that's a wonderful example of this thing working. But a couple other quick examples. I'm in economic development, so one of the great white papers in economic development out there is about the concept of economic gardening. And this started in Littleton, Colorado. And really what they did was essentially got out of the way of all of the traditional economic development programs that they have been doing. And they asked entrepreneurs, what do you guys need? And for the most part, 90% of their money went into providing things like research reports and other things that they could do to feed these startups, and in some cases, fairly successful businesses that needed to get to a higher growth phase. And so that economic gardening from that standpoint. But as a culture of economic development, we've kind of tried to stuff that economic gardening system into our bureaucratic ways, and we haven't always kept it true to the formula, but it's out there and it's working. And the other thing I want to throw out is the more organic, the more grassroots something is, the more success it has a chance, the more success that can come from it. And I used to be in economic development in Wyoming, and it's a small state with, everybody knows everybody, so it's easier to get things like this done. But we had an accelerator that would run as someone's business. This double PhD in chemistry said, I want to have an accelerator, and I want to make money from it.
Right.
And so he convinced the University of Wyoming to give him space, and he convinced our economic development agency to support him in a number of different ways. And he built an accelerator that was profitable to him as an entrepreneur.
So there was incentive. clearly. I mean, to take
Yeah, so rather than economic development or a university saying, we're going to have an accelerator and you guys are going to act accordingly, he said, we need an accelerator out there, I have some space, and he grew it as an entrepreneur.
Right. Now, sitting on this panel, we have three folks who clearly get it, right? But you're also dealing within the confines of a system and colleagues that may not get it. And so part of that comes from all of you in the room, which is communication. And one of the things in terms of trying to sort of read up and ask you some slightly relevant intelligent questions today was communication. What are you not getting from the disparate reaches of this community in terms of what their needs are? I mean, the Business Journal, we always we make a process of knowing that we don't know it all. And there are companies that show up that have huge employee bases that we didn't know, who knew. So what kinds of things do you need to hear from the folks at the startup community and the folks that are operating in their own little individual spots that would help you evangelize? Is there anything, do you have any thoughts about that?
What helps me coming to events like this, talking to students like at the hackathon and others, talking to young entrepreneurs and saying, okay, what do you need? Because that's what we've been doing. I mean, I spent the last, since I was elected in 2004, trying to figure out, okay, really, what should we be focusing on? And like everyone else in government, I started with, again, giant corporate relocation, chasing the whale. And slowly, as people grab me and say, Mark, that's not really the future. It's the startup community, recognizing that, in order to create this environment where we want businesses that are looking for tech talent to come here, I know one thing we do need. We need a workforce. The workforce development is enormously important. We need to train people. So, and it seems like I'm not quite sure what you start with. Some will say if we could only bring the next Google or Apple or something here, then the tech talent would stay here and we'd have more coming. Or we nurture the tech talent and then the companies will come here. I think what we're looking at is trying to help tech talent and then help tech talent start up small businesses where a significant number of the new jobs are. Two books that I really like that I've gotten a lot of information from. Clifton's The Coming Jobs War, phenomenal book. Clifton talks about your airport, your downtown, your university, driving job creation. And there's another gentleman who teaches at Berkeley, California, an Italian guy, I can't pronounce his last name, and he's written a book called The New Geography of Jobs. It's fabulous. It kind of takes right off where Richard Florida, who really I think is the disciple of this type of stuff, I mean, for me, kind of talks about the importance of, again, creating an environment. And there's some things that we at the county have not done well at all to try to bring people here. A lot of it has to do with just encouraging a diverse population, saying, we welcome you. I've said to our staff folks at the county, I want to see more guys working at the county center with tattoos and nose rings. I want to see people who look different because I tell you what, they bring a different perspective to the workplace and they've got a knowledge base that some of our older guys just don't quite have. So really it's trying to encourage a more diverse population, bringing people in that are different than us, and then dedicating the resources that we have, not to again chasing the whale, but helping the small startup guy.
Great. Let's go to, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but let's go to a question. Tell us your name and what
my name is Brian French. I lead the LinkedIn group and I've done meetups groups for over 3 years. One of the issues that is really important that you guys who have made it ignore is the micro entrepreneur. 78% of the businesses in the United States have one employee. What are you guys doing for the solo small guy? I'm doing a lot. I've done meetings for 3 years. I've never seen any of you leaders at any of my meetings caring about any of the people I talk to. So if you're looking for input, attend to some of the other people who are contributing, trying to build community, and dealing with the real grassroots.
When you say that, what kinds of business are you talking about?
To go to your event costs a lot of money. Okay, most of these small people don't have a lot of money.
Right.
They don't have 5 or 6 grand to sponsor an event. So you pull the successful companies, larger guys that have already made it, guys that my people compete with all the time. Okay? So you don't reach down enough. You don't reach down to the small guys.
Well, but when you're describing your guys and people that are going to these meetings, what size are you talking about? Small, 3 to 1 person? Okay.
So I just said 78% of the business.
All right, I got it.
By one person.
I got a comment on that.
You just did.
Because I am an SBDC consultant. I'm paid by Pinellas County Economic Development. We partnered with the SBDC. and I see 1,000 people a year, 58% of those people have zero. In other words, they have not earned their first dollar. So, and something like 73% of them have one employee or less. So, you know,
I'm with you.
we're helping people left and right in the SBDC, and the Hillsborough County has an excellent program with the SBDC as well. And if there's ways we can partner with you, we'd be happy to.
And I was just going to say, I think again, it's understanding and communication. I don't know that the innovation side of technology has been fully embraced and understood as an economic development aspect, because as part of the IT study, I spent time saying, look at all these meetups, look at all these innovative activities that are going on, these small groups, these BarCamps, and discussing them. And when we got to publish the report, the comment was, what is the significance of this section of your report? And I said, basically, innovation, if we have a strong, innovative community, tech community that with the meetups, that's an attraction to companies to say, this is where your people learn. This is the best way to learn new strategies. I mean, just standing in line, listening to all of the, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that, you can't get that from a classroom training. You can't get that from just sitting in your own environment. It's about integrating and sharing and the diversity of thought, and that's the strength of this community, and that needs to be marketed. And I don't think we market that when we market to bigger companies.
Well, I'm just saying, we're very old school. I mean, our focus, the program when I got to the county, the program that we were focusing on was QTI, Qualified Targeted Industries. It was a program designed for, not a business of one. I mean, Erica was at 100? 100. And then we made the adjustments to QTI and we brought it down to 10. And we were excited about that. And I think in large part, that's why this is so important. Talking to your elected officials from Tallahassee down to the local government, and really stressing the value and the importance of the small startup. Right. And that's what we are trying to do. I mean, there's an adjustment. It's just that, and even your incubators at the university. You know, does the incubator at a university really encourage that business of one? I'm not sure that we're really good at that right now. Do we have the Y Combinator school that they've got out in the West Coast? I mean, you see all these great Kickstarts, Techstar, things that are going on in other parts of the country. Why don't you have it here? Because I'll tell you, when you get smart people sitting next to a guy that's going to help you, fund you, and maybe work in your business, I think that's when it all starts to take off, and then government basically is a feeder. We get out of the way. We don't drive it.
So what you do to help? We have a couple questions here. I just want to quickly say to you that that's fair feedback. I don't know that you invite. I'm happy to come. I'd love to. We're always learning about how to respond. But we do 5 or 6 times a year a BizMix that's completely free that has 500 or 600 people that's networking centric. So just I'm happy to come, but just feel free to invite me. I saw you first. Let's go to my hands.
Hi, this is kind of back to you and your question. I work for economic development.
What's your name?
Tell us. And where do you work? Summer Martin.
Okay. Yes. Of course you have.
But there are organizations out there. The SBCC does a whole lot for small businesses with employees less than 10 people. But this problem we noticed in Pasco County and really all of Tampa Bay. And one thing that we've done this year, we went out and we raised $200,000 so that we could do microfinancing for startups and tech entrepreneurs. And we've given out 6 loans to companies with less than 10 employees. With around actually most of them 1 to 2 employees, and those 10 companies have already hired 6 new employees. So that way they're growing. So there are programs out there for you. I mean, our program alone can give loans out up to $35,000. It's just a matter of getting in there and finding out about it. So it is there.
Okay, I saw you. A lot of hands are going up. So you're next.
Yeah,
tell us your name and what your question is.
Cynthia Laura Molina, I'm with Central IQ. So my question is, does the community have a master database that has everyone from micro businesses all the way up who are focused on technology and appropriate fields for sort of slicing and dicing that data?
A master database, Mark?
It's being worked. I will say this, EDC, under the new leadership of Rick Homan, gets it.
Yeah.
Rick is a dynamo. He didn't get here. I mean, look him up. He's got great experience, and he turned the EDC and partnership, and the others said, we're going to work collaboratively together to get this information, because it's embarrassing how much information we didn't have about our own communities. We were resting on our laurels. We had growth, 30,000 people a year moving into Hillsborough County. We're building homes like gangbusters. We had low unemployment, one of the lowest in the nation for home building, and everybody was affiliated with home building. But when it collapsed, we all just kind of stood there flat-footed, didn't know what to do, and Rick's come in and is driving them hard and putting that together.
All right, real
He's
quick.
also working with Pinellas County, so I think what we're looking at is solutions regionally, which is a new way of looking at it. So you don't have to go to Pinellas or Hillsborough, you can go to both, and both EDCs have the same goals and objectives of working with the tech workforce, and I think that's a huge, I've lived in this county for years, and the bridge was the bridge.
Right.
And now the bridge is open back and forth.
I want to hear a lot. Did you have a very quick follow-up?
Yeah, just here's the challenge that I'm trying to solve. So a company like mine's been working in several other sectors. We're now shifting our attention to IT and tech. And so I'm trying to figure out how do I quickly connect in this community around that. And I find lots of little pieces, but no unified connection and way in.
Well, I think it sounds like that's in process. At least. You have a question. Tell us who you are, and then we'll go to the back.
My name is Frank Nugent, BarCamp, Sarasota. Just want to give you guys some quick things to think about, maybe you want to write them down. As far as bringing into education, the Ross Academy on Long Island and their institute in Manhattan, they're starting at middle school, and they're bringing in entrepreneurs into the classroom. There's Girls Who Code. It's also started in New York City and is recognized by the
incredible things going on in New York.
All right. Here, right here in this area is the Indus Entrepreneur Group that just had a launch. It's $100 to join, and the family members pay $1,000 to tutor entrepreneurs.
Wow.
Okay? So that just started. Everglades University is starting an entrepreneur program. And the EDCs, STF, South Coast Technology Forum, had a meeting where Manatee, Sarasota, and Charlotte all got together and presented, and they're all sharing information across there. So, and they're part of the partnership. They're not even included. I hear all the partnership stuff, and I don't hear the other counties except for the stuff that was more considered the Tampa Bay area.
Right.
And so that's and what was Rick's last name?
Holman. Rick Holman.
What?
Holman. Rick Holman.
I'll give you his name afterwards.
Okay, question up here. On the way in the back. Let's see. Tell us who you are.
Brett Toby with Carboy. Is there kind of coordinated outreach towards the, we'll call it the Gulf Coast diaspora? I think a huge portion of our human capital hops on the plane every Monday morning and goes elsewhere. I was commuting to Long Island, and if we hadn't had a sample, I would have been out in California to start a company. We had started here. There's a lot of folks that I run into that have roots in Tampa Bay, and that seems like a good opportunity for EDC. There's significant entrepreneurs who've gone elsewhere who'd love to come back. Same reason we get people moving to Tampa Bay. It's a great place to live.
Right. So what's your question is there
coordinated outreach towards folks who have connections to Florida, the Bay Area? From an EDC perspective, because there are probably lots of low-hanging fruit when you talk about 10 and up, somebody who's been successful
sure.
Come back. Human capital is a lot cheaper here.
That's actually a target population of marketing effort that we want to get underway with the EDCs in the area, because we estimate about 2,500 people go through the airport Mondays through Fridays to other areas, and then there's a whole other group that lives here and just works remotely for companies outside. So they go both ways. And we want to market and bring that talent back. We looked at the salary issue as part of the study, and based on our survey results, companies said they pay the median, mostly pay the national averages. So there's a disconnect between I leave because I can get more money and we pay the national averages. So we want to market to those populations to bring them back over the next 6 to 9 months.
On that population, you're here for quality of life. You're going to be on a plane anytime, you might as well come home to someplace nice on the weekend. But there's also a huge pool of talent that has roots here. I mean, I know 5 startup CEOs who have funded close to $10 million in the last 12 months.
Right.
Roots in Tampa Bay or elsewhere. That seems like a good place to start.
Agreed. Let's go here and then you. So
to his point,
Yep.
so my name is Roy Reynolds. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've successfully exited 7 technology companies. I've worked in corporate America. I've acquired more than 13 companies. I've raised over $200 million in venture capital. So I've done bootstrap, angel, VC. 2,500, not in the ballpark.
Not even close.
Not anywhere close. I can tell you right now that I know just from people that have worked for me personally in the companies and have done things like that, that number is maybe 10% of the number. Okay? Absolutely correct. There are technology entrepreneurs who do this all day long, every day. I lived here while exiting more than half of those companies. I lived on the other side of the bridge. So I'm from the Sarasota side. But I've worked all the way from Naples all the way up here. But I've raised money in the Valley. I've raised money here. I've raised money in Boston and in DC. And the bottom line is, what's missing, I'm on the next panel, by the way, what's missing is that conduit in between. So I watch the same people get on an airplane with me. When I worked in corporate America, and I worked for a company out of California, or one based out of New York, and I see the exact same faces.
how do we get to what's missing, though?
So the bottom line is, you're not approaching those people. Those people don't work for the companies. You're not going to get them that way. You're going to have a grassroots outreach like this, like what you're doing, like the other pieces to get those people. Because they participate in those little groups, and you're going to have to get people who built those companies and exited them to help you put that network together.
Yeah, obviously today's a good start. Any thoughts about these comments?
But I think you answered it yourself. I mean, you know, that the more grassroots stuff there is. I mean, you're a perfect example. How many companies have you been involved with?
I've exited successfully 7.
Okay, and so
I failed though,
this
as
is
well. So
these periods of time when someone is doing something outside of our economy, they're short. I mean, you're not old enough for that not to be short. So if you've done 7, right?
Right.
So it's short. So as long as we've got grassroots things going on here, there's really an opportunity that next year there might be something here that attracts someone like you.
Absolutely right. I mean, I tell you one quick example. We did a company, and when I talk this afternoon, I'll actually use that as part of the example and some other ones. 427 days, start to finish, sold the company, all in Florida, funded, their board members, everything out of the state of Florida, sold off my technologies in 427 days.
So I think the point of this today, which I think is very valuable, is hearing that input. And so now I go back to the EDCs and the counties and I say, we need to work and create that opportunity where we're going to bring back the travelers and have an event that says, all right, here's the companies that have the jobs down here, and figure out what we need to do. We do it.
It might be as simple as just putting an ad on, you know, at the airport. I mean, I would go far.
Mark, a quick comment, and I want to go here.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, we're still not structured for this type of business environment. So what happens is we have a conference, we talk about it once, we might invite someone to be on a board, and then we go back to the old way of doing things. It has to be every day, 24/7. That means you've got to get involved. And what Brad's book, what I got from that was, you know, they built it in Boulder because you got the entrepreneurs got together, the ones that are working 24/7 on the business, said, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to mentor. We're going to help. We're, you know, maybe run for city council, but we're going to get engaged and get involved. What we've been doing, again, here in Florida, because we got beautiful weather, all these wonderful things, we've been going for the low-hanging fruit where it's been easy. But I think now we're starting to see that there's a lot of excitement about this, but we need you to get involved. The Tampa Chamber, you got this group called Emerge. It's fabulous. The only thing that frustrates me is it's kind of like we talk to them like babies. And one day we will pass the torch to you, and then you will take it on at some point in the future. Bull! Give them the torch now. You know, let them get them engaged now. Don't hold off and wait. And there's just this sense that we're almost kind of holding it tight, and we'll let you get involved later. I wouldn't do that. I would say start it today, but I will credit the chamber and what they're doing. Tucker Hall has been very involved in this, going out and finding young entrepreneurs and placing them in positions of power right now.
Okay, you have been handed over, then we'll go to the back, and we'll try and get as many of you involved as possible. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Derek Trickey. I'm with William Blunt, small game company here in Temple Terrace, actually.
Right.
We just started 3 months ago. We were very small company. We were one of the 78%. We have a product. We're not a shelf client. And yeah, so we're already selling a product. What we're fast learning is that we don't need any more coders or development people. We actually need promotional people. We need to promote our product and advertise. Have you seen any institutions or startups that are successfully like marrying tech people and promotional people in Florida or here in Tampa?
Any thoughts? Are you ready for that?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Mark mentioned Richard Florida's book, The Creative Class, and I think what you're doing is you're extending the argument outside of just tech knowledge and tech people and saying, hey, there's a lot more to the creative class, which includes these marketing people and others that need to grow, and I think that's a great thing to address.
Part of it is the silo stuff we've got going. I mean, here at this great university, sometimes you got different departments, you don't talk. What I'd like to see is you knock all that stuff down and you get your marketing folks sitting down with your designer folks, and that's, you know, and begin to talk, and suddenly that'll happen. But we are still structured as a community in these silos, and that's made it challenging for people that are right next to each other. Maybe it's just a building apart to sit down and work with each other.
Even when you get to public PRSA and
call your EDC or whomever, and I'm sure we can put you in touch with people.
Yeah, I'm sure there's somebody in the room that can help.
Yeah.
You've been waiting. Go ahead.
I'm the chair of the advisory committee for the Tampa Innovation Center. I'm also working with the Tampa Partnership as the chair of the Applied Medicine Committee, and I'm working with Board Venture Forum and others. I know I've talked to Chuck Sykes and said he would write a check for $50,000 to put signs in the airport. We have Startup Exchange and other things for companies that won in the Tampa Innovation Center, so talk to Tanya Elmore and go to tvinnovates.com and should be hooked up for that community.
So you're addressing that to me?
Yes.
The thing is, so I lead a group of 7,000 people, so I can drive into small, and I have, to your group, but nobody's reaching to me. I have to like kind of chase y'all down, maybe you'll take my call, maybe you won't.
We have Startup Exchange for anybody that wants to come. We have professionals, other people there to talk to anybody that wants to come in, you know, companies of one or above. Happy to do that. I know the Tampa Bay Partnership is all over this, trying to get this community drawn together, and we're trying to come up with a blueprint and plan. We're looking for people to help, so we're looking to people like you and you and you and.
Trying to get to everybody who's trying. I know that you right there first. Go ahead, tell us
J.D. Shapiro, author of a book that put empathy. And I want to say, Mark, to your point on government and technology, I don't think government's going to be able to help technology because it moves too quickly. But what I do want to know in the presentation in the beginning is long term.
Right.
Our public school system here, how do we drive the cost of education down? Because a mind is now the product we produce, and every product this country has ever produced, we've driven the cost of that product down but raised the quality. So from government, how do we do that? Because that's something as technology people, we can't fix public schools. We can fix our technology, and that's what we're going to do on our own. Government and these institutions need to fix the public education system.
Yes,
one of the strategies that we are looking at, and I've done a lot of interviews with education, is bringing professionals such as yourself into the classroom to actually do the training so that we don't have to do the technical training, so that we're not spending a lot of money on developing technology that goes unused in the classroom. Show the student, when we did student interviews, they said, we need challenges, we need games, we need opportunities to play and explore. So the mind is not always developed in the classroom. The faculty provide a great liberal arts and a tactical or a basic education for them so that they know how to learn other things. So that's what we need. One of the things we're looking at is bringing in people such as yourself in the middle school, high school, college classrooms to teach. That then makes the student more productive and valuable into the workforce when they enter the workforce, and they actually come into the workforce because they have the skills. They can do the internships. They have the skills. So I don't know how much, I don't know what the return on investment and how that would drive education, what the actual cost that would be reduced. but it will increase the quality of the student that is graduating, and they will be the entrepreneur. We need to explain to them how to be an entrepreneur. It's not being, they're not learning at a young age.
Well, Vinny nailed it though. Long-term, short-term really, education, public universities. First thing I would say is call the governor, call the speaker, call the legislature and say quit defund. I mean, I know we are looking for the cheap way around funding education. The bottom line, when you look at a state as large as ours, as diverse as ours, you've got kids coming in who don't speak a lick of English, and when they're sitting in the classroom, you're going to have to fund education. California went from one of the best in the nation to one of the worst because they stopped funding it and they got overwhelmed. Florida's gone from one of the worst to one of the best because we are doing a lot of things with accountability, which I strongly support in the public school system. But at the end of the day, with as many kids as we got coming in, you're going to have to fund it. There's no cheap way around it. And I would hope that the legislature and all of our attempts to cut spending would focus on education and continue to put more money into it.
Right here in the back.
I think that...
Tell us your name and where you work.
Oh, sorry. My name is Eli. I work for a company called 46 Creative. I just moved here from Oklahoma.
Welcome.
Thanks. I think that in terms of addressing the problems with education, especially public education, one of the best things the tech community can do is continue to promote open sources culture rather than just technology movement for developing certain specific brands of software. When you do that, you have increased collaboration, you have the interdisciplinary work that we need for the future of education, and you're also promoting open sharing of ideas, which builds a good creative infrastructure for the future.
Over here on the right.
Yeah. My name is Daniel Messick. My company is OPL. I've worked with economic development agencies around the country. I spent 20 years mining in Silicon Mountain. I find it very interesting. But now that they've lost all of their corporate headquarters out of the state of Colorado, there's no major corporation now operating out of the state of Colorado. They finally discovered entrepreneurship because the economy was a disaster 20 years ago.
Right.
So we may have to reach that. But all the studies today show that economic development is derived not from land, building, and real estate, which we now discovered. It's derived from intangible capital. So how does the Economic Development Society in Tampa identify what is unique and specific to this area in terms of its intangible capital? If the beaches aren't going to do it.
No. Any thoughts? How do you identify?
I mean, I'm just going to admit, we're not prepared to do that yet. All of our models are based on measuring things that are old school, if you will, so we've got to change.
Exactly. So best practices are paradigm. If you model yourselves after the best practices of Silicon Mountain and Boston and the other communities, you are achieving parity at best.
Right. Where do you go beyond?
How do you leverage the tangible capital of this community to leapfrog to the next generation?
Part of it, though, I mean, we built suburban communities which are comfortable for some individuals, but a lot of when I've gone out and visited those communities where you've got a tech community thriving, they love to ride bikes. We're one of the most dangerous states, in fact, the most dangerous state for bicycle riding. So you know what? We're starting to focus. The mayor's focusing on this. The county's beginning to focus on. You talk about the intangibles: bikes, parks. You know what? Young techies are not really excited about large, NFL franchises necessarily. They like different types of sports. So we got to be focusing on that. One thing Asheville's really been big on is craft beer. I'm a big fan. I got my Tocobaga shirt from Cigar City. I'm a big fan. But that type of stuff seems and lots of coffee shops. We're all coming.
There you go. Right. Right there. Go ahead.
My name is Michael Johnson. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company in Temple Terrace here back in 2004, and I sold my last company here in January this year. I moved down to Sarasota now. One of the things I looked at heavily, though, was the economic gardening. Gardening here a couple of years ago when I was looking at building my last company. And I found that there was a cutoff point, really, and to get to that point, a lot of the especially with startup entrepreneurs, never actually get there. And so it's great to see that you're actually starting to go down there and foster that micro entrepreneurship, those companies that are 1 to 10 entrepreneurs that Mr. French here was talking about earlier. But the biggest problem is going to be the mindset, communicating back and forth. I don't know how many times you've reached out to them. Obviously, they have reached out to you, but it goes both ways. And we can't, you know, we live here. We need to reach out both ways, and I think that's a great thing.
Well, everybody's so busy working on their business that it's very hard to find the time to communicate about your needs and wishes.
So the only question I have though is the last company I built was virtual. Okay, and I really am still running into resistance anytime I'm dealing with anybody that's on the government side, that they don't see the value that I build with a company when it's all virtual. I don't have an office that I go into. I chose not to. I started the company with an office space, and quickly figured out that there's no reason to have my employees there, and none of my clients ever show up there. And in fact, for 5 or 6 years, I didn't even have my closest client who was in Canada, wasn't even in the state of Florida. And so there's nothing being done that I see to support that virtual entrepreneur that can actually build a company and build something that's going to bring tax dollars, a lot of tax dollars, into the community that has nothing to do with that.
Isn't so Tampa. I know you have a thought with it.
Yeah, do you guys have anything to deal with that now?
I mean, I think what you're seeing is that you're bumping up against the state of Florida's economic development versus what we're doing in counties and lower. And I think at county level and lower, we understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that the state of Florida has been able to create economic development programs that can address what you've said. And you know, I guess it's our job, particularly guys like Mark over here, to influence the
Keep
state.
being vocal about that and articulate it. I mean, that's the key. It's simple.
But keep it up, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way.
We need to too.
I'm going to bounce off Michael's statement. So, the U.S. economy is changing. The global economy is shifting right now. Obviously, we need our public sector organizations to shift their entire paradigm as well. I've worked with economic development for 15 years in Florida, and one of the things that I've seen, going back to your discussion about hunting whales, is it comes down to accountability. In the end, these organizations are still rewarded for their headcount, the number of jobs that they bring. And they're always going to be disincentivized for assisting the half-a-job companies and virtual companies, as long as what goes in the paper and what you get promotions for and bonuses for is how many thousands of jobs that they have brought in. This does not lend itself to these job movement. But the money that's raised here stays here. Do we have any comment on how we are going to transform government to be accountable in a different way?
Well, I mean, I've had this conversation with those in Tallahassee here locally about trying to just we have to retool how we both measure and also encourage and grow and reward those that are involved in this business and trying to grow economic development. It's starting to happen. I'd love to see it, you know, with the governor working down and local working up. We can meet in the middle, and that's what I'm hoping will ultimately happen. We just have to have that conversation. I'm really impressed by how rapidly things are starting to change. You know, the one thing, you know, it's like if you look at world events, you see leaders in power, you think, well, it will never change. The Soviet Union will always be the Soviet Union, you know, and bam, and it's like a house of cards. That what appears to be so powerful can collapse overnight. And so I see it occurring. My concern is that when we collapse, we'll have utter chaos. And so we've got to have a structure for this.
Right. Ken, you have a question. And we just say, I want to thank Ken Evans for making this panel possible.
What Guy was saying is we don't have the right metrics in place, and people perform how they're paid. And so with traditional economic development, old school economic development, we go after big companies. We go after only W-2 jobs, and I would say most of the people in this room are probably not W-2 jobs or have had 1099 jobs for a good portion of their career. And economic development needs to morph into something that recognizes the more dynamic nature of how people work, where they work. The amount of square feet leased just doesn't matter anymore because we have virtual companies, or we have co-working, or we have all sorts of things that, you know, economic development, its emphasis is normally on development, not on the economics, and that needs to balance out.
I'd also just say to your point, hold on one second, I'd just say to your point about, from my perspective, we've been really trying to not just cover stories that relate to jobs. per se, and to look at, from a coverage point of view, evidence this week in terms of coverage I wrote about, taking a close look at the partnerships effort for Front Road Bank. How are these sort of legacy efforts, are they effective? What can be done? What do we need to be doing differently? I know you've already asked a question, but we don't have a whole lot of time.
We've got like a minute or two to wrap up. So
I have a very good comment.
Well, go ahead.
We have a guy who innovated Kickstarter for government of some kind in here. Why don't we leverage that to try to get this thing solved? Where is that?
He left the room. He'll be doing another presentation today, and we all like him.
So I have time for one more question.
What a story that would be, right?
Agreed. It's a great comment. Do we have time for one more question then?
Sure, go ahead.
One more question. Who wants it? Anybody? Right there.
I have two things to say, really. First, I'm a product of the Florida educational system, and so the first thing I was to say is I wish you sincerely a lot of luck with the legislation and trying to get more money to education. It's always been for the lottery, and we know this, and that's part of the reason why that's what. But you're right, it is getting better, and that's a good thing. The second thing I wanted to say was that I also saw you at the hackathon, and I did mention that to some friends, and it's important that we see you there because then we know that you're out there and we can get, your communication.
Government folks are afraid. We're afraid. I encourage people with Twitter, Facebook, and there's a ton of new social media to hear. Oftentimes we don't want to hear. We're a little worried about that. So I would say engage. Ken comes to all of our meetings. I mean, you're a brave man, and you're patient because he sits through some of our meetings. He goes to our board meetings. Go talk. I think what happens is that you start to begin to make yourselves visible in city council meetings, in commission meetings, talk to the mayor, talk to your legislators. They will listen, but if they don't hear you, they don't see you.
It's collective knowledge. And with that, I guess the last thing to do, and this comes inspired from you, which is what do you get from this? A call to action, which is it's a great place to go, which is to communicate, to be the squeaky wheel. I'm very accessible. We don't know. We get a ton of input, 700 or 800 emails a day. But if you have a story to tell, I would love to hear about it. We want to try to tell that. So carry forward. Okay?
And we actually ask the people who are in front of the room if they are not otherwise booked to stay, because some of the people in the audience, Joy among them, Robin among them, as well as some startups. There are going to be some people talking about fundraising and all the issues you just heard in reverse. And I think it'd be really good if you were in the audience and participating and asking them questions in reverse. If you wouldn't mind considering that also. Thank you.
And I would like anybody's business card that wants to get involved in solving the problem and doing some issues, because we really do need to contact some of you to get new voice in the conversation.
Do you want me to thank you for the panel?